Hi, welcome everyone to my week 6 presentation titled Judicial Hybrid ADR. A lot of disputes has an underlying theme of cost, and particularly in the public sector, as we have to be transparent and efficient with public funds. The majority of disputes are addressed towards costs, whether it's between jurisdictions or the jurisdiction and a contractor. Now, when projects or disputes get large, normal negotiations through mediators or facilitators may not work. And to, be stewards of public funds, we need to explore other methods prior to litigation. And judicial hybrid ADRs can be a process to be utilized prior to litigation. Now, disputes between agencies or an agency and a contractor can get pretty complex because they usually originate from contracts that can get pretty lengthy. Now, one of the first steps that agencies or parties can use to save cost is the early neutral evaluation process. Through this process, there is more of a fact-finding method where a third party can look into the case and evaluate the facts and limit the dispute in the areas for both parties and assess strengths and weaknesses. In Wayne Brazil's article, he discusses further where ENEs can identify the legalities of the conflict and develop a strategic plan specific for both parties to follow and agree upon, right, where they can feel that it's sufficient and responsible. And so through that process, a lot of issues can be resolved through just focus of the facts. And as mentioned, depending on the scope and size of a project or the disagreement, simple fact-finding procedures usually wouldn't resolve a dispute. In a larger dispute in regards to contracts, a dispute resolution board is usually utilized because the board can act as an enabler by providing expert advice and decision through a structural process, and often they act as mediators as well. Now, in Michael Camper's article on DRBs, he elaborates more on the beginning process of the contract, that it's important to include a DBR process because there are usually conflicts or disputes when a complex contract is involved, and so usually it's good to keep a DBR process in there, and it's also important because a DBR usually consists of expert members from both parties that's approved, and then the approved parties then approve a sort of third member on the board, or however number to get an odd number to be able to make a decision usually. Now, dispute resolution boards sometimes can't come to a conclusion because the board is made up of members from both parties. And so they may elect to go through a mini trial prior to litigation, because through a mini trial, there's more specific information shared, and communication is done through a courtroom setting where even a possible judge can preside over the dispute, and organizations can be aware of what the policies and programs are of the other party. And Lawrence Fox's journal article, he mentions that mini trials can be an early intervention technique that can assist in settlements because it involves a structured method of mediation that requires both parties sort of to narrow their disputes to critical and merit-based areas. However, mini trials are still non-binding, but they are flexible in that they do provide both parties to get a snapshot of how things will look like in litigation. And finally, with a summary jury trial, it's a bit of just an extension of the mini trial where a jury is brought in, and they are not told that this is not an actual trial, and so they are brought the actual facts in dispute areas, and specifically, this can actually save both parties time and cost involved in a lengthy court trial involving a jury. In Anne Woodley's journal, she states that summary jury trials are favored by judges because many of them feel like it's a reliable predictor. And as a result, they can bring the disputes to life and isolate key factors. And she also goes on to say that a lot of states do mandate mediation through summary jury trials because it provides the full setting of a trial, but it can foster mutual agreements in more amicable ways and preserve relationships. And that is important in the public sector if you are sharing boundaries between jurisdictions. Now, I found two articles related to the topics this week. First one is from the San Francisco Chronicle about a rooftop pathway project where the Transbay Transit is arguing that the materials provided by the contractors is not safe enough to handle the weight. Now, the contractor is stating that the transit mixed the materials in order to get the color they want, therefore voiding the warranty by changing up the process. And so this will go before a review board, and we'll see how that pans out in the next few months. Second article is in regards to Santee Cooper. And there is a dispute between them and the state utilities rates. And so now this comes down to a cost. And so this actually did go before a review board made up of both parties, but it came to a stalemate where no specific decision was made. And so therefore, they may go to a mini trial, hopefully, maybe a summary jury trial where they can avoid litigation costs and hopefully get back on serving the public and not having delays in service. So with that, thank you, and I'll see you guys next week.